September 2, 2017. Springfield, Ohio. 10:31 p.m. She stood in the doorway. Phone in one hand. A kitchen knife in the other. Blood covered the floor. And her baby girl wasn't moving. The lights were on. But everything felt dark. Too quiet. Too cold. Sirens were still minutes away. But it was already too late. The baby, Lalana Sharp, was just 1 year old. She had been stabbed. Over and over. By her own mother. 17-year-old Lachelle Anderson. Why would a teenage mom do this? What did that little girl see in her final moments? Why didn't anyone notice the signs? This really happened. You can check the facts yourself. Subscribe to Unbelievable True Story. Because monsters don't just hide in horror movies. They live in small apartments. In quiet towns. And the next one could be someone you know. It was a quiet Saturday night. Most people in Springfield, Ohio, were getting ready for bed. The streets were still. No loud cars. No music. Just silence. Inside a small apartment on East High Street, the lights were on. The curtains were closed. From the outside, everything looked normal. But inside, something was very wrong. Lachelle Anderson, just 17 years old, stood barefoot in her kitchen. She held a knife. Her hands were shaking. Her baby girl, Lalana Sharp, only 1 year old, lay on the floor. Not crying. Not moving. Just still. Covered in blood. Lachelle picked up the phone. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She dialed 911. The operator answered. "What's your emergency?" Lachelle whispered. "I killed my baby." The dispatcher froze. "What did you say?" Lachelle repeated. "I stabbed her. I killed her." Then she gave her address. And hung up. No screaming. No crying. Just silence. Police raced to the scene. So did medics. Everyone thought maybe, just maybe, they could still save the baby. But it was too late. When officers arrived, they found Lachelle standing in the doorway. The knife was still in the sink. The baby was on the floor. There was blood everywhere. On the carpet. On the walls. On Lachelle. The officers rushed inside. They checked the child. No heartbeat. No breath. Lalana Sharp was gone. She had been stabbed more than once. A beautiful baby girl with brown eyes and curly hair. Gone. An officer gently picked up the baby. Wrapped her in a blanket. Even though they knew. She was already cold. Another officer led Lachelle to a chair. She sat down quietly. Didn't ask questions. Didn't say anything. She just stared. One of the officers asked, "Why did you do it?" Lachelle didn't answer. She looked down at her hands. Then said, "I was hearing voices." The officer paused. "What kind of voices?" Lachelle said, "They told me she was evil. That I had to do it." The room fell silent. The only sound was the radio crackling from a deputy's shoulder. They took Lachelle into custody. She didn't fight. Didn't cry. Didn't ask to see her baby. She just walked away with the officers. Like she already knew what came next. The apartment was now a crime scene. Detectives came in. Took photos. Collected the knife. Bagged bloody clothes. They found toys on the floor. A baby bottle near the couch. A pink blanket. All the things that made it look like a home. But something evil had happened there. And no one understood why. The news spread fast. Neighbors stood outside. watching the police cars and flashing lights. Some cried. Others just stood in shock. One neighbor, Mrs. Jackson, said, "She was always quiet. I never saw her hurt that baby. They looked happy." Another said, "She was just a kid herself. A baby raising a baby. No one had seen it coming. No one." The next morning, Springfield woke up to headlines. Teen mom arrested for killing one-year-old daughter. People were angry. Confused. Heartbroken. How could this happen? Why didn't anyone stop it? Was there any warning? At the police station, Lachelle was interviewed. This part was hard to watch. The detective sat across from her. He was calm. He wanted answers. Lachelle looked tired. Her eyes were red. But not from crying. From not sleeping. He asked again. "What made you do it?" Lachelle whispered, "The voices told me she was cursed." The detective leaned forward. "Voices? From where?" She said, "In my head. They started after she was born. She talked about hearing them at night. Telling her to hurt herself. Then telling her to hurt the baby. She said she tried to stop them. But that night, she couldn't." The detective asked if she ever got help. Lachelle shook her head. "No. I didn't tell anyone." "Why not?" "They'd take her away from me." That one sentence made the detective pause. It was heartbreaking. Even in that dark moment, Lachelle thought she was protecting her child. By staying silent. But that silence had led to something horrible. Later, a psychologist would examine Lachelle. They said she had signs of postpartum psychosis. A rare mental illness. It happens to some mothers after childbirth. It causes confusion, hallucinations, and fear. And if untreated, it can lead to danger. Even death. Lachelle had no history of violence. No drugs. No past crimes. She had never been in trouble. She had never hurt her child before. But on that night, something snapped. Something inside her mind broke. And the result was deadly. That didn't bring comfort to anyone. Especially not to the people who loved Lolana. Her family was devastated. They posted pictures online. Lolana's smile. Her first birthday. Her playing with a teddy bear. They wrote, "She was the sweetest baby. She didn't deserve this." And they were right. She didn't. The door to the small room closed. Click. Lachelle Anderson sat in a metal chair. Her hands were cuffed. The room was cold. The table was gray. The walls were bare. There were no windows. Only a camera in the corner, quietly recording. A detective walked in. He wore a badge on his chest. And a look of pain on his face. This wasn't just another case. This was a baby. 1 year old. Dead. He sat across from her. Opened a folder. Inside were crime scene photos. A birth certificate. A list of emergency calls. And one picture. A photo of Lolana. She had big eyes. Tiny teeth. A baby smile. He slid the photo toward Lachelle. "Was this your daughter?" Lachelle looked down. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. She just nodded. The detective leaned in. "What happened, Lachelle?" Silence. He asked again. This time, softer. "You can talk to me." She whispered. "I didn't want to hurt her." Tears formed in her eyes. But the voices, they kept yelling. The detective stayed calm. "What did they say?" Lachelle answered slowly. "They said, she had demons inside her. That she wasn't real. He paused. He had heard this before. In other sad cases. Young moms, no help. No therapy. No medicine. Only fear. And hallucinations. How long have you heard these voices? Since I had her. Did you ever tell anyone? Lachelle shook her head. No one believed me before. I thought they'd take her away. The detective flipped through his file. He saw notes from child services. There had been no visits. No complaints. Nothing. From the outside, Lachelle looked like a quiet teen mom. Trying her best. But inside, she was falling apart. The detective pressed on. Did you love your daughter? Lachelle looked up. Yes. With all my heart. Her voice cracked. She was my only reason to live. Then why, Lachelle? Why hurt her? She closed her eyes. I thought I was saving her. The detective didn't yell. Didn't raise his voice. He understood the danger of untreated mental illness. But that didn't change the fact. A child was dead. A baby who never had a chance to grow up. To go to school. To learn to walk. All gone, in minutes. He asked. What happened that night? Lachelle took a deep breath. I was giving her a bath. She was laughing. Splashing. Then the voice started again. Loud this time. They told me to look in her eyes. I did. And I saw something wrong. The detective didn't speak. He just listened. They told me if I didn't stop it, something worse would happen. So I picked her up, wrapped her in a towel. She stopped. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I got the knife. I told myself I wouldn't do it. But my hands moved. I stabbed her once. Then again. And again. She began to cry. I screamed. But no one heard me. Not even God. The detective looked away for a moment. He had children. This case hit hard. He quietly wrote down her words. He knew she was confessing. But it wasn't just guilt. It was confusion. Pain. Sickness. And tragedy. He asked one final question. If you could go back, would you stop yourself? Lachelle nodded quickly. Yes. I'd get help. I'd tell someone. I'd give anything to bring her back. She placed her cuffed hands on the table. But now, I have to live with what I did. The interview ended. 2 officers came to take her to a holding cell. She didn't resist. As they walked her out, she looked back at the photo of her daughter. And whispered, I'm sorry. Outside the room, the detective sighed. He knew this wasn't a simple case of murder. It was deeper. Darker. A mix of fear, silence, and untreated mental illness. But at the center of it all was an innocent baby girl. Gone forever. The tape from that night would later play in the courtroom. The jury would watch. And cry. The judge would listen. And shake his head. Because sometimes, justice isn't black or white. It's gray. Cold. And hard to understand. But the truth was now recorded. In that cold interrogation room. Where a young mother told her story. And a baby's voice would never be heard again. The courthouse was quiet that morning. Gray clouds covered the sky. The wind felt heavy. People walked in slowly. Reporters. Families. Officers. Everyone was there for one reason. To hear the fate of Lachelle Anderson. The teenage mother who stabbed her baby girl, Lolana. Inside the courtroom, it was still. You could hear a pin drop. Lachelle sat at the defense table. She wore a pale orange jail uniform. Her wrists were in cuffs. She looked down at the table. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. Across from her sat the prosecutor. He had one goal, to bring justice for Lolana. The one-year-old baby who never got to grow up. The judge walked in. Everyone stood. Then they sat. The trial began. First, the 911 call played. Lachelle's voice filled the room. She sounded scared. Confused. Crying. "I think I hurt my baby. I think she's dead," people in the room gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others looked away. The pain was too much. Next, the crime scene photos were shown. Blood on a baby towel. A kitchen knife. A tiny hand. One juror wiped tears from their eyes. Another shook their head. The room was heavy with sorrow. The prosecutor spoke firmly. Lachelle Anderson made a choice. She stabbed her daughter, her own flesh and blood, 5 times. She didn't call for help before. She didn't stop after the first wound. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Then the defense attorney stood. Her voice was calm. But her face was full of sadness. She was only 17. She had no support. No therapy. No medication. She was hearing voices. She was not in control. She loved her daughter deeply. She wasn't evil. She was sick. The courtroom listened. But it was hard to understand. How could a mother do this? Even a young one. Even a scared one. Even a mentally ill one. Then came the doctor. A psychiatrist. She had spent weeks speaking with Lachelle in jail. She has postpartum psychosis, the doctor said. She was hallucinating. Hearing things. Seeing things. She believed her baby was possessed. She believed killing her was the only way to save her. The doctor looked at the jury. This wasn't hate. It was illness. She needed a hospital, not a jail cell. The prosecutor stood again. But the baby is still dead. Voices or no voices, we must protect our children. This cannot be ignored. Then it was time for sentencing. Lachelle was allowed to speak. She stood up. Her hands shook. Her voice was small. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt her. She was my heart. I wish I had told someone. I wish I had asked for help. I will never forgive myself." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked at the judge. "I'll carry this pain forever." The judge looked down at her. Then at the jury. Then at the baby's photo. There were no easy answers. There was no way to undo what happened. Only one thing left to do, decide what justice meant. Finally, the judge spoke. "Lachelle Anderson, you took a life. A baby's life. You were sick. But the result is the same. You must be held responsible. But also, you must be helped." The courtroom held its breath. "I sentence you to 15 years in prison, with treatment for your mental illness. You will serve your time in a facility where you can get the help you need." Some gasped. Some nodded. Others said nothing. Was it enough? Was it too much? No one really knew. As Lachelle was led away, she looked back one last time. Her eyes searched for her daughter's photo. She saw it. And whispered again, "I'm sorry." That was the end of the trial. But not the end of the pain. Lolana was gone. A family was shattered. And the young girl would spend years behind bars, trying to understand what she had done. Because in some crimes, there are no winners. Only loss. Only grief. Only questions. Today, Lachelle Anderson sits behind locked doors. She gets therapy. She's on medication. She writes letters. Some to her parents. Some to no one. Just to herself. In one letter, she wrote, "I see her face every day. I hear her laugh. I killed my heart. I wish I could take it back. The apartment where it happened is still there. Quiet. Empty. Sometimes neighbors walk by and stop. They remember the baby. Her smile. Her laugh. They wonder what could have been. This was not a movie. This was real. A baby girl is gone. A young mother lost her mind. And a community is still asking, how did this happen?" This is the story of Lachelle Anderson and baby Lalana. Don't forget it. If you're drawn to real stories that stay with you, subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story. Because every week, we reveal the darkest truths hidden in plain sight. Watch the next video on your screen, or dive into our playlist of true crimes. The next story might be even more shocking.